Hi, welcome to Sky Notes. This week, Lillian and I take a look at the astrology of July 2026. Then we zero in on the astrology of July 1st to the 4th. There are a lot of twists and turns happening in the sky in the coming weeks, so tune in and find out what we uncover as we check our Sky Notes. Hello, and welcome to Sky Notes. Hey, Lillian, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Tracy. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're going to talk about July today, and we're going to talk about the first week of July, but we'll give a brief overview of the astrology for the month of July. And I definitely want to start with what we're coming off of from the end of June, because there's big transitions at the end of the month that we're bringing forward into July. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So we come into July, Mars has just gone into Gemini. And Jupiter's just gone into Leo. We have a full moon that happened on the 29th of June. So we're still in that full moon phase as July begins. And why I thought it was important to kind of bring up where we're coming from is because with Mars in Gemini and Jupiter in Leo, they're going to be making all of these aspects right away. And actually for a big chunk of the month to all those outer planets that are in fire and air. Hey.
So any planets that go into 0 degrees, Gemini, Aquarius, all of the outers, right, are in those first, what is it, 3 to 5 degrees? 4.
Yes. They sit at 4 for a long time, but yeah, we can safely say between 3 and 5 degrees. Yeah, for sure.
Is going to be affected by these outer planets. And the expression on a human level is we see transpersonal events and we could grab them and hurt ourselves with them, or maybe we're in them. But they're transpersonal events crossing over these personal planets, kind of challenging us to grow. That's what I would say from an evolutionary astrology perspective.
I love that. I do. Because, I was just sitting here thinking and wondering, because so you named the air and the earth signs that people could be, the transits they're going through, which is going to be the easier aspects of those outer planets, which is what we're going to be going. I mean, Venus is the exception, as is Mercury, because Venus is going to be in Virgo and Mercury is going to be in Cancer. So they're not going to be making easy aspects to those outer planets, but the ones in the air and fire are. And I was kind of trying to think, what does that mean when we think about the outer planets being a more collective, happening around the world, that kind of idea? With the easy aspects, are we going to have an easier time ignoring what's happening in the world? Or with the positive energy, maybe feel more compelled to help what's happening around the world? I don't know. I'm trying to sort that out. It's definitely with the sextiles, there's an opportunity, right? We always want to talk about the opportunity of the sextile to go in and help.
I'm going to talk briefly about an anecdote about Seth Meyers as a metaphor for some of this. So he had a baby. No, he didn't. We know who had a baby. His wife had a baby. And she's in the elevator, and she gets off the elevator, and she says, "The baby's in my sweatpants." And she had the baby from the elevator to the lobby. And this dignified woman who wanted privacy instead had an entire New York City lobby of people watching her trying to manage getting a baby out of her pants and keeping her dignity. Wow. Okay, so positive story, right? Beautiful story.
Yeah.
You're still going to feel all that outer planet transpersonal stuff.
Right.
I think.
Right. Yes. Yes. Now, there's lots of room for positive change. There's lots of room for positive growth, with Jupiter being one of the aspects, or one of the planets making those aspects. But it is overall, this month is dynamic. It is, again, I'm going to say it again, ground yourselves, damn it.
And I say the opposite part of that, it's explosive. There's explosive stuff. And I think we're going to weave in some information on nostalgia and yeah, a security and that kind of thing. But to me, the opportunity is to ground yourself so that you can ground that energy. It's just a tremendous amount of energy happening
Yeah.
with specific tendencies that could be disruptive.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and just really easy to get carried away.
Yeah,
And that can be defined in so many different ways, depending on which outer planet we're talking about, right? But there's just
agreed.
lots of opportunity to be carried away. And to add a layer to that, we also are lacking fixed energy with the closer planets. And that is also the similar feeling to lacking Earth, where the energy is quite active. It's hard to anchor into anything. So that is one of the things we'll navigate and depend on the moon for all month.
So interesting. It's so interesting.
And speaking of the moon, we are having so many void of courses this month because everything's in early degrees.
Mhm.
Um, the wildest one being I think it's the new moon, and is it the new moon in Cancer? Yes, it's the new moon on the 14th,
Got
where like literally the moon, the minute that new moon starts to separate, the moon is void. So that new moon, the energy of initiation, we'll talk about it more in depth, but that particular new moon is very weird just because it's void almost immediately.
So I can start talking about some of this stuff I've been thinking about in regards to how to use this astrology. When things are void, it's a great time to get rid of stuff. It's a great time to hear yourself, especially if you're concerned that the stuff that's going to come out is going to be bullshit. And you're not going to speak your truth. You're going to speak some tape, I guess they would
Mm,
say.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
speak it, there's outcome, and get rid of it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Also, because this has been a theme off and on for months now, where we get these very long void of course moon periods. I've been clocking it, right? How does this feel? And
Yeah.
in certain signs, it's definitely a feeling of like, I don't feel like doing a darn thing. And just, rest is a really great way to use that.
Mhm.
But on days where there's lots of energy and other transits are sort of kicking things up, it has been really effective for going back to things that had been left unfinished. So that was the other way that I thought, oh, that's fantastic. Like, and really like closing chapters of things that you're just done with,
Yeah, that's
and you can just
beautiful.
shelve it and you don't have to look at it again. So it definitely, I kind of went into this whole period of void of course moons thinking it was going to be so not productive, but that hasn't actually been the case.
Yeah.
And if we go back to things that we've been talking about now for quite a while, is there have been so many things wrapping up with the planets and
Yes.
things changing signs, the bigger cycles. That it's almost like we're getting these voids to actually do that
Do
effectively.
that work, yeah. Because you wouldn't want to build, right? This is the stuff we wouldn't necessarily advise. No new business, no new projects, unless you are in a new phase and you want to feel what it feels like to put energy in something that won't continue to exist.
Yeah.
That could be a weird, interesting way to use it.
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
I like what you're saying. It feels like
Yeah.
there's this too muchness, and then folks are disconnected from the ability to let go, right? Or to metabolize or to process or to even acknowledge this works with me. This is what I need. This does not work with me. This is not what I need. And of course, the folks who get it, that's not who we're talking to. You get it, you get it. Lucky you.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
the void, of course, is a taste test for those of us who are trying to figure out between one and another.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the gift that we've had planets being ruled by the moon for so long, Jupiter's been in Cancer for years. So we've really gotten to feel with Jupiter sort of expanding that energy, really gotten to feel what those phases and things that the moon goes through over the
Yes.
last year. So I've really appreciated that. It's been a different experience.
Yeah.
This Jupiter and Cancer season for me anyways. Um, but on that note, we wanted to talk about nostalgia
Yes.
because it's been such a theme with everything in Cancer and coming off of Jupiter and Cancer. And I just wanted to say, I was sharing this until we were actually filming, but I reconnected with a friend I hadn't seen in forever last week. And not just like the thing that took me by surprise was, we talk about this stuff and we can, plan for it for as much as I can plan for anything. But the natural occurrence of old friends and acquaintances floating back into my head, things that I hadn't remembered in such a long time. It's just wild to me that it's like, oh, here's your nostalgia. You don't get to really have a choice here's things that, it's been wonderful, don't get me wrong, but it's just so wild to me that we see astrologers say, oh, this stuff doesn't happen to you. It's like, I don't know. I mean,
I
I
love what you're
agree.
saying about that. I love what you're saying about that. I think there's such a disconnect from allowing yourself to feel what's in your body. And in this work that we're doing, even on a podcast, I feel very connected to my body. And I know by being in the same room with you and your work with sound, that you have a deep awareness of your body and how it intersects with dimensions. And I think that that's where the struggle is. We're trying to get you to a concrete experience of it so you can make your own decisions about how you'll use it and how it works for you and how it fits in with your system. But that's a pretty big gap. And so we try metaphors and we try personal experiences and all that kind of stuff because we're trying to allude to here's the positive of it. And also here are common traps. So.
Right. Yeah. And so I've really been noodling over this whole idea of astrology being something that happens to us versus what, right? And it's almost like gauges on some kind of a wild device, and that as soon as something clicks into the right gauge, that energy opens up and we can either get into that flow or we can try to avoid it.
I like that.
It's not a fully formed thought, but it's just really interesting to me. Anyways, go on.
Coming from a different, from like a crowdsourcing kind of thing, I think folks should know about this. There's a controversy in the astrological community because there are systems and techniques that have existed for a long time. And then there are observations that make these systems new. And sometimes people want to TM them for themselves. And somebody has TM'd an existing technique called astrocartography. And now I'm trying to get back to why I brought it up. Why I brought it up is because Philip Sedgwick, an astrologer in Arizona, talks about how creativity works. And it's frustrating because often it can be frustrating, but it's useful to know. I feel personally, and this adds to what Philip says, we get information across the globe at the same time like this. And people who are tuned into it, ready to metabolize it, ready to deal with it, start talking about it. Happens in multiple places, maybe different languages, so we don't necessarily notice, but we sure do notice when two people get the same idea and they're proximal to each other, when it still could be that occurrence of, hey, the earth is growing this information for us to harvest. If you harvest it, you're one of the millions of people harvesting it. And so understanding that gives you a different perspective, like, okay, this vessel wants to understand this information so that I can share it. I wonder how it'll come out. And I think that can relieve the egoic stuff around owning it, which is relevant because we're talking about Jupiter and Leo. And so all the Leo stuff, as you have said before, and I have Jupiter and Leo, I have to say, it is not subtle.
No, and it's really not going to be subtle this month because it's doing some pretty cool shit. So, yes.
So on the other side, happen to you, touch into it, single person processing, many people processing. I think we're going to see the gamut.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think that's the beauty of astrology too, because even like some of the transits I've been going through with my chart have not been the easiest. And somebody had asked me, "Oh, how's that?" And with great concern. It was Saturn going over my moon and my Chiron. And I was like, yeah, it was very dark. It's not, takes you to dark places and creates insecurity and loneliness, like all those stereotypical things of a Saturn transit to your moon, right? But with astrology, when it's gonna, it passes. So you can sit in it. What am I supposed to be learning right now? Why is this coming up for me to look at? And the power in that is immeasurable
Yeah.
when it comes to my own mental health. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, no, I was going to add from my own standpoint, I'm in a raft of positive transits, and the stuff that's coming up is heartbreaking. And I think it's part of that transpersonal processing from one sign to another for the outer planets. And it's important to know that it's hard. It's a hard thing to face, but I wish we would grasp this very tenderly. It's a miracle, you guys. Sorry, here I'm back on the screen. It's a miracle that we're alive. I'm not emotional. I just almost swallowed a bunch of coffee down my airway. It's a miracle. It's a William Shatner looking at the planet going, uh-oh, we're far too comfortable with our grasp on the planet. We need to recognize how fragile we are. And it is that way when you're doing reflective work, self-work. You're not trying to free yourself from any bad thing that can happen. You're trying to free yourself from getting trapped in it forever and never getting out. You get to stay a human if you do the work. And that has to be as valuable to you as your addictions or escapes or any of the other stuff, or you won't do it. So you're seeing what's valuable when it's dark.
Love it. Yes. Well, and this is relevant because with them, we're still having lots of nostalgic energy happening for a lot of the month,
right?
Mercury is in Cancer for a ridiculously long time, retrograde. So just that in itself is extremely nostalgic. That combination of retrograde and Mercury in Cancer. And then the sun is there too. So it's just a lot of potential to be faced with things that you thought you'd long moved beyond.
Wow. I'll tell you, here's a funny story just to wrap that up. So for the vibe of the month, from my standpoint, in America, we're doing this big 250 years of white leadership, but having a country. And the one I remember best was 1976. So I was around 10 years old, 9 or 10. And we got quarters with the bicentennial stuff put on it. And it was so fancy. And then there was all this talk about 1776. And I just remember it was just a flurry of activity. And it was so exciting. And I didn't understand a lot, right? Because I was just a kid. And so when I think about Jupiter with Cancer, I think about nationalism for real. I think about you really want to be proud. And if you have to kind of put blinders on to be proud, people are going to be wearing the blinders. And then the outer planets will be those blinders getting torn away by the darkness going, it's okay. You just need to get a couple of pieces of information. Just sit here for a second.
Right.
But when we talk about next week, we'll get a tiny bit of grounding just to kind of give you a sense. So I know you've been doing it. I've been doing it. When I see folks who maybe don't watch the podcast, but they're friends who know I'm an astrologer, I'm like, ground yourself. And I saw a Pisces friend of mine, and I was like, let us just discuss what's happening here. So you've got the grounding you need to go forward. For 7 years, I need you to just sink your feet into the ground every time you feel a little flighty, because there's not enough water. And I know we're in Cancer season, so it seems crazy, but I think, if you're in a drought and you see water, it's still a drought.
Right. Yes. So let's talk about this first. Well, it's not really a first week because it's we're starting on a Wednesday, but we're in a full moon phase. We've just had a full moon when we walk into this week. And we start the month, we've got that Jupiter square Chiron. So Jupiter's at 0.
Yeah.
Chiron's at 0. And the thing that's interesting about that is the fixity, right? We're getting at 0 degrees, we're getting a fixed square. And yeah, and so and there's a preview in that. There's something in that story, that Jupiter Chiron story, that's showing us. And I'm going to say this is the thing that I was thinking about just when I break down the square aspect, the fixed part of the story, and where we are in the cycle. There's something through conflict between our beliefs and our resource wounds that we'll see where we can benefit from that and do something positive later on.
So first, what will happen is conflict.
It could be inner conflict, it could be outer conflict, but some kind of conflict.
And then the tail of that is there's an opportunity.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah. The beauty of squares are they always present some kind of a resolution. Whether you like it or not is the other story, right? But they do always present a way out.
I like that. I love that you said that. The Pollyanna in me is always like scared. The squares are so awesome because they always resolve, because I live with inconjuncts and goofy trines that I have to activate. And then the fact that you say, like, if you don't like it, it's still resolved. I'm like, it cannot be.
Yeah. And not everybody loves resolution, because if resolution doesn't go their way,
Well, they're crying out kittens. That just means you don't stop till you get what you want, you guys. Don't be swayed by that bullshit. You're just not done. Kidding me? Not get what you want. It cannot be.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the week. So it's interesting because we've got Canada Day will be July 1st. 4th of July is on the 4th of July. So we've got this, there's something in that story, in those national stories, that's being kicked off with a square between Jupiter and Leo, big egos, and Chiron and Taurus, wounds around resources.
With the life of me, I don't see any of that in the atmosphere.
Yes. So that happens, that perfects on Wednesday. So we're going to feel that as the month of June has ended, and as the month begins. So we've got that feeling coming in. Also the fruitfulness. I love that it's also starting on a full moon, and that fruitfulness of a full moon with Jupiter and Leo, that abundance, that solar energy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
on the fun side, there's a lot of good physical activity you can get. You can go out to the beach, you can get out into nature. I think there's a lot of vitality that we can really enjoy with that Jupiter shifting to Leo, and then this being in Cancer.
Absolutely. And then we mentioned already that we're going to have all these void of course moons throughout the month. And so we start right away on the 3rd, Friday, July 3rd. The moon begins void of course at it's 11:30 my time, Mountain, and 1:30 your time, and Eastern. And it's void of course all the way until midnight, just past midnight my time. So in the middle of the night for you. So that Friday has this void energy with a moon in Aquarius. So I don't know. What do you say about that? What do you say about moon in Aquarius?
I always hear from folks who have the Aquarius Cancer. Yeah, because we've got the stuff in Cancer and then the moon in Aquarius, that there's both a shocking disconnect between dispassion and emotion, and a shocking bond between dispassion and emotion. And so I like a moon in Aquarius for parties. I mean, we've talked about that before, like that it's a good weekend for a party because nothing's going to come out of it. And of course, that's perfect. Everyone will be partying on the northern continent. So there's a lot of activity that can really be enjoyed with no, lasting problem, right? I like that. In terms of the kinds of stuff that I really get into, like negotiating or doing things with people, I wouldn't do any of that this weekend, the void of course weekend. I would let go of my agenda. I would really look to kind of be tender with people. And then I would hope that that moon in Aquarius would add more people to that people, if you know what I mean. Because
Mhm.
in Aquarius is loving of all in this unique and interesting way. So
Right, right. Yeah. Well, and so as you were talking, I looked to see because the 4th of July is the next day, and there are things lining up on the Friday as Mars starts to sextile Neptune and conjunct Uranus.
yeah, I know, right? We knew that was coming.
Yeah. So that'll be in play on that Friday the 3rd. So the nice thing with the void of course moon is that that likely isn't going to turn any like big event stuff, right? As those things are lining up. And I say that because when we're looking at transits, if the moon isn't there to kick something off,
Right.
likely it's all talk, no action sort of thing. But I'm going to recommend that while the moon is in Aquarius, so one of the things if when you have a progressed moon going through Aquarius is it's a great time to shore up your energetic boundaries, right? And
Yes.
yeah, and so do that on
Yes.
Friday. Um,
Nice.
because it with all of the energy coming the next day and all the events at the next day with the moon in Pisces, then everybody's pretty porous. Everybody's picking up everybody else's emotions. Everybody's susceptible to picking up all of the crap energetically in the
So
air.
I don't have the info in front of me. What's the gap between the void of course into the ingress?
Well, the
Is it
ingress is at like 12:30 a.m. my time, so 2:30 a.m. for you.
gotcha?
We
Okay.
wake up to it, right? We wake up to that Pisces moon. Um, and then we have, and actually the Mars Uranus perfection. This is good, actually. The Mars Uranus perfection actually happens at midnight, like 12:07 here. So
Wow.
before the
That's
moon
good.
changes sign. So that's excellent that we actually don't have
Yes.
aspects before that perfects.
Yeah,
That's a bit
I
of a
agree.
relief. Yes. And then yeah, so we should talk about the 4th then. So this is interesting because the nodes station direct that day. And I mean, I don't have you read any really great information on the nodes stationing? Because they do it all the time, all month long. They station, they're doing this all the time.
So my tendency, because this is our interpretation of the appearance of something moving back and forth,
Yeah.
is that it has a similar feel to other retrogrades because it spends most of its time in retrograde. And so I've not read anything. I have been tracking it and have not felt anything. So I don't have
Mhm.
anything useful to give apart from it is irregular for it to be direct.
Right. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. It's what I have them direct in my birth chart, and that's pretty rare. Not a lot of
Yes.
people have that. But it's significant that they're at 29 degrees. So they are stopping or yeah, no, 0 degrees, zero. They haven't changed signs yet. Remember, they're backwards. I have to remind myself. So yeah, they're sitting at 0 degrees
Yeah.
and they're just sitting at 0 degrees.
Yeah.
And I mean, the significance of the retrogrades in general is that means that the planets or the points are at their closest to Earth, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um, so that to me, it's like maybe you feel that karmic pull, that karmic shift that we're about to go through. That would be maybe the thing that comes up.
I like that because I do feel like there's a sea change at play. There are diasporas being created, even if we haven't dispersed yet. And it's big stuff, right? The dominoes of climate change. I heard that the jet stream may fail by 2050. And we're all like, I don't know, do you think it's real? Instead of what we should be doing, which is stop until we create a just transition away from oil and gas and coal. There's political stuff at play. There's all kinds of like questions about as a culture, do we have the right to just knock people on the head or do we not have the right to knock people on the head? So it does feel like monumental stuff is coming. And I do like these pauses. At the same time, it may not surface for people in their personal lives. And so
Right.
these become sort of beams or moments instead of like engines
Right.
of
Right.
activity.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, I wouldn't even bring up Nodes Station except
Right.
for all of the other stuff happening that day,
And
right?
the
Because
29th degree, right?
exactly, and
Yeah.
they're going to change signs this month. So
Or the
there's
0 degree rather.
and it's happening on the 4th of July. You know what I mean? So it's like it's a bunch of stuff stacking up.
That's what I feel. That's my
Yeah.
spidey sense. But I
Right.
also want to say, like, it may not be for everyone.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, for sure. And so the last thing that happens that day is the Mars is sextile Neptune. So we have Mars conjunct Uranus, and then it's going to sextile Neptune. And Mars conjunct Uranus, just without the sign of Gemini in there, is very jarring. Like that's can be a shocking event,
It
right?
has the tendency to escalate quickly.
Yes. And that's one of the reasons why it's great that the moon remains void for the big apex of it. But that is not going to save us from feeling in Gemini our nervous systems kicked right up.
That's
So
correct.
for the 4th of July, people are going to be agitated.
Yes.
Do you feel that?
Well, I know we've said this jokingly before, but with the Uranus transits, with the Neptune transits, it's like big information dump, and then you go get drunk.
Yes.
So I see a million parties all over the city going, 23andMe shows that you're my father, or whatever. And then people going, no, 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 no. We just wanted a burger and a nice afternoon.
Well, now, okay. So then we also have the Mars sextile Neptune, which, I mean, that's a nice aspect, great. But the potential for delusion in that combination seems a bit problematic, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but the folks I know who have Gemini influence are feeling that Uranus, and it does show up in fancy pants. It will show up and say, I have got an idea for you. You have been chosen. This is the thing. This is da 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 da. And then it walks out the door and leaves you hanging. And I have had to say over and over, write it down and wait, because you'll see if there's longevity over time. And so to me, it is like a big, like, I don't know how the Gemini in my chart, I was laughing. It's in the 8th house. And I was like, well, I guess we got to get that trapeze I've been talking about. Because it's weird, Uranus in the 8th house, and it's sexy. So my husband just laughs and indulges me. But that much input is not necessarily biologically, it's like being struck by lightning.
Yeah.
So there's an entry, there's an exit, and you pray that it's grounded. I mean, it's another way to talk about it. And then the Neptune will tell you whatever you're doing is right.
Well, that's, yes, 100%.
And on the dimensional level where everything is happening, you are right. And so are you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you. So then what?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I was saying, get drunk.
Well,
But
and
you
also
don't have to
wear a condom. You know, be protected.
wrap
Neptune
yourself up, boundaries.
sextile Mars on the 4th of July.
Wow, I love
Protect
that.
yourself for sure. Like,
Love that.
be realistic about the consequences of your actions this on the weekend of the 4th of July, right?
That's really good. I like that.
So Mars and Gemini, sextile, Neptune and Aries. That just seems like really bad choices.
I don't know. Excellent stories.
Oh, absolutely excellent
Yeah.
stories. Once you've gotten over the, oh, why did I do that? Moment
Yeah,
of it.
I'll tell you a story that you want to hear it.
I do.
Jen, I'm hoping it's a good one for this example. So I have a friend who's a wildlife biologist, and she's always having to help me out to understand that unrealistic things don't happen with animals. And one of the things I asked her about was like, if you see 6 coyotes as a human, do you have to run? Are they hunting you? And she's like, no, baby, what's up with you? No, that's not how it works. But she told me this story about how they do hunt, which is one of the coyotes will go in and get a dog maybe and play with them and then trot off, and that dog will trot off, and then 2 more and 2 more and 2 more will come, and then they eat the dog, right? So I've shared this story with my husband because like that's wild, right? That's like a whole bunch of fairy tales all wrapped up in one, and it actually happens. And so my husband does a lot of bike riding around Durham, and there are tons of deer, and there's a drought. We have a backyard full of animals because we have water in our backyard. That's what they want. And so the animals that are in rural areas are coming in closer. And so he's riding his bike, and he was near this place where we had hiked like a week or 2 ago, and he sees a big dog running, and he's looking at the big dog, and then he sees a deer running after the big dog. And he was like, that's a coyote. And so he's waiting, and when the animals show up, he just stops, and they know he's there, and he knows he's there, and and they do their thing. Then he sees 2 more coyotes, and he remembers that story. And then he remembers other stories where, like, we have a fish pond and a heron came and ate the fish, and we put a net over it because we want the fish and not to have to buy fish every time for the herons. And we have bird feeders, but we don't want to feed the hawks birds. And there's just all of this confrontation with the limitations of what humans can do in terms of saving or not saving or interfering positively. And so he says something because he knows that that'll interrupt all of the action that's going on, that it's all dependent on him not moving. And so he says something, and the coyote that's luring the deer hits the road, just runs. And the other coyotes just go stink back. And the deer like looks at him, and he's like, this is no good. You got to go. And the deer ran, and he didn't know, like 10 minutes later, did the dehydrated deer run into the coyotes again? But to me, I'm blown away that he had that experience. That's like an actual thing that happened to him, where he had to make those choices and saw predators and said, I will interrupt predators. And so to me, that's like a validation of who he is.
Yeah.
For good or ill.
Right.
And Uranian.
Right. Well, yeah, super Uranian, right? With the pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, and so that I love, oh gosh, because when I think about my flip remark about wearing a condom with a Mars and Uranus, and Mars and Neptune, that's a pattern interrupter. So whatever bad choice you make on July 4th is to disrupt whatever pattern it is that you are subconsciously trying to disrupt. So
that's a cool observation, that you may go the wrong direction to make the right choice, but that the function of it is to interrupt bad patterns.
Yep. Or stale patterns, or patterns that have to be changed. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be dramatic at all. We've said it over and over. It's discrimination, it's boundaries, it's little things that allow you to navigate. That deer probably got at least 10 minutes of peace.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, it's interesting, because that idea that we always assume as humans, change has to be big, that disruption all those things that change our trajectory need to be big moments or big decisions or big actions. And that is absolutely not true. If you are living purposefully, with some kind of conscious whatever.
It could be 1% change.
Oh gosh, it can. When I cut hair, my favorite haircuts, and this is such a Virgo thing, were when people came to get a cut fixed, and it literally would be like a half a centimeter off of just a very particular part of the haircut, and the entire thing moved completely differently. And it blew my mind every single time. That's such a tiny little shift in the mathematics of the haircut was all it needed, And so when Uranus went into Taurus, and I was talking to all these fixed sign peoples, it's like the changes that are being called for you can be as simple as take a different route to work every day so that you're noticing what's going on around you. If you are not running on habit, you're gonna notice what's happening around you. But as soon as you're in your lane, you're taking it all for granted. So, it doesn't have to be a big deal. It really
Yeah,
doesn't.
it really doesn't. I love that. Bernadette Brady said it could be as simple as moving your watch from one side to another. When people had watches, wore watches, you can put on a meaningful piece of jewelry for yourself that you've been holding for a special occasion. You can change how you look. There are a million different things, but I'm not talking about what some people do to change how they look. I'm just saying, like, change your hair part or something. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And because we have Uranus that's just started out its journey in Gemini, any of the people with mutable stuff, you're going to be having a pattern interruption at some point in the next 8 years with Uranus aspecting your sun.
Yes.
Or if you have a mutable moon, right? It doesn't, if you've got mutable inner planets, there's going to be a pattern interrupt, so
I like that.
just be aware of where there is stagnation,
Yeah.
and then you at least kind of will understand
I like that.
what might need to be shifted. Yeah.
But the first week, realistically, we expect you just to do whatever celebrating you want,
Mhm.
whatever enjoying of the winter in the southern hemisphere and the summer up here in the northern hemisphere. It's party weekend. It's just a prelude for a lot of stuff coming.
Yeah, and things are likely in that first week gonna take you by surprise. There's lots of Uranus energy and lots of Mars energy. So, plan for diversions, plan for surprises,
And
have a
that,
great time, but try to be a bit safe with, some choices.
I love
Yes.
that.
Yeah. So I think it's gonna be a bang up first week of July to lead us into what is absolutely going to be an eventful month. And also, one of the things I wanted to mention about the energy with all the void of courses is that the entire month is likely to feel like stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, stop,
Good
go.
call.
So
Good.
just be prepared for that energy for the month of July and this first week.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next week with week 2 of July 2026.
So next week.